Hey, and welcome to part 3 of last week's New Comics, bitches! So, let's get down to it. I'm going to have my little kind of indie segment here. Okay, The Red Wing, 2 of 4. Again, Jonathan Hickman's extremely, high concept time travel war thing happening here. This again, the more complex that a comic can get, the more confusing that it can get. Sometimes it does benefit, and this is not to say that it's necessarily a good thing or that people are writing comics specifically to have them collected in trade format. But it does help to actually sometimes just get trades. I think this is a good example of that, because I think once you can read the whole thing from beginning to end, it makes a lot more sense. Because right now, especially with when I read Watchmen for the first time, it was the first trade paperback I ever bought. I bought it in 1988. I actually still have that same. Yes, the back cover is missing. All the paper, all the pages have like water spots on them. But I still have it. I still read it. And I still love it. But if I had gotten that in individual issues, especially when I was 13 years old, I wouldn't have been able to make heads or tails out of it. And still every time I read it, I do catch something new. But anyway, this is one of those things that I think with repeated readings, it will make more sense, and you'll discover something new about each time that you do read it. Basically we have kind of we have the two young men in the future. We have Dom and we have Val. These two friends who are basically they've basically just gotten their wings as pilots of the TECs, and then we have kind of almost this prose moment with Dom's father in the past, where he's explaining to kind of this elder tribesman, from this very ancient race, about what's going to happen to his people. He's trying to explain the concept of war and conquering. And this guy doesn't really get it because nothing like this has ever happened. War just simply isn't something that's existed. So, I mean, is part of what, is this maybe kind of a 2001-esque kind of, okay, the monolith comes down, the apes touch it, all of a sudden they're able to, all of a sudden they have, knowledge, and they start to evolve beyond themselves, and actually start to display violence. And of course, and Dom's father is found. Who finds him, however, that's the that's the real thing. Is that, and because Dom, he seems to be having a real problem with just basically how time works. That he still kind of sees it as linear, and one of his instructors is trying to show him that essentially there's all these different layers of time, and sometimes you can punch right through them. And it's just like I said, very high concept stuff. New ideas being presented, and I love that. I love this book just for the fact that it's not aiming for any kind of lowest common denominator reader. It's aiming for the smartest person in the audience, and just basically hoping that other stuff will kind of drip off, that people who aren't so kind of with it, maybe like myself, will just, pick up some other wonderful things along the way. And like I said, this is a really wonderful book. It is a mite confusing, though. it's still, like I said, still really solid. Hickman does some great work. I love Pitara's art on this comic. It's really tremendous. But on to our next indie here. So we've got Morning Glories, number 11. Basically the story of Ike. Now, people who have heard me talk about this comic before have probably also heard me refer to a series that was on Cartoon Network called Tower Prep, which was essentially, it reminds me a lot of this. It was a live-action show done, it was created by Paul Dini, who's, great writer, great TV creator, worked on Lost, and he worked on, he helped to usher in Batman the Animated Series. He did a great run on Detective Comics, but that's kind of beside the point here, because now we're dealing with Nick Spencer. And Joe Eisma, his artist, who always does great work. Again, thank you, Comic Noob, for getting me into Morning Glories. It's a fantastic read, always. I'm glad I finally have it in my pull box. I've been borrowing the other issues and making notes up until now. So this is basically the story, of Ike the douchebag, the uber douchebag of the kind of Glories group here. And, he's this, kind of hyper-sexed, totally immoral, young man. Possibly, maybe he killed his own father. He's being offered basically some, like he's going to be let go. Like basically he'll have the opportunity to go home, go back to New York City, get out of the academy, and go back to doing, all of his, all of the other stuff that he would do, everything with his money and his power and his prestige, because, his father obviously owned this huge corporation, and he will soon be head of it. But he has, basically is told by Mr. Gribbs that, in order to do this, in order to gain his freedom, he has to kill somebody. And then we get this, if it weren't so hideously awful of a thing to do, it would be, and it is actually still funny in the context of the comic. He rents, this tour bus to go to his own father's funeral and basically mock him and just, say what a dick he was, and, how he's just having a great time now that he's dead. And then it gets even more involved when someone tries to blackmail Ike with the actual footage of him leaving his father's bloodied body, instead of the sex tape that actually showed up online that supposedly proved that he was, making this sex tape at the same time that his father was killed. So, kind of the ultimate alibi, if you will. But we show that he may end up having a kind of closer relationship with Miss Daramount. And that's a lot of woman there. And now who he has to kill, now that's something that I didn't see coming. My jaw certainly hit the floor. I'm sure if you read it, yours did too. Morning Glories, I saw, it's funny because I saw it on Twitter recently. I saw Nick Spencer wanting to talk, send a direct message to Damon Lindelof, who is one of the showrunners of, one of the creators of the show Lost, because this show, this comic has a lot of Lost type elements, and that's actually a good thing here. It's certainly not by any stretch of the imagination a ripoff, but with the flashbacks, kind of the bouncing back and forth in time, from the past to the present. If that continues to be a theme that runs throughout this book, as far as character and plot, it, like I said, definitely resembles Lost, but it's by no means a ripoff. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that Twitter conversation, because you got one guy who's responsible for some of the great comic work that's coming out right now, and then you've got a guy who's responsible for one of the greatest pieces of TV entertainment, I would say, of all time. But all in all, what a great issue. Wow. Just totally floored. Moving along. Criminal. Last of the Innocent, number 3. I love this book, man. This is the book, this is the issue where everything goes Riley Richards' way. Everything, his whole, the framing of, his, his childhood rival, for, his wife Felix's murder, that he committed himself, actually tying the murders to, tying this murder to another slew of murders that happened when they were younger, when they were in high school. It's 3 other, so we're actually looking at, he's basically making it look like, well, this is possibly, a serial killer. The whole thing with Freak Out, and with Miranda, the character of Miranda, I don't know if she's actually represented in one of the other books of Criminal, but I like to think so, because if it's not, it feels like I'm missing something. If that's not her, I feel like I did miss something along the way. Now, it's made a lot clearer that in this book that we're looking at something that's happening either sometime in the 70s or the early 80s. It's not happening in present day. And that's something that has always been interesting about Criminal, is that they've never kind of really put, well, this is the year and this is the time. Obviously, there are incidents like, for instance, during the Lawless, the character of Tracy Lawless, that was, he was a soldier during the Iraq War, but it doesn't really say which, because it might have been Operation Desert Storm, or it might have been Operation Iraqi Freedom, or whatever they want to call it now. So again, everything is really looking out for him until, of course, the end. In which, so I mean, this is, again, Brubaker and Phillips do another extraordinary job of making a great comic, a great crime comic, a great pulp noir comic. It's just so amazing. It's so wonderfully done. The dialogue, like I said, I do think that The Last of the Innocent is going to, will be, at least for now, my favorite Criminal arc. Because before that, my favorite Criminal arc was Lawless, but this is becoming my favorite pretty quickly, especially because of the mixture of Sean Phillips's kind of his wonderfully kind of almost painted art, it might even be painted, and kind of the Archie art that he uses for flashback to more innocent time effect, but is really quite nasty and brutal at times. So again, just such a great book and such a great experience with comics. So we're going to be right back with our 2 books of the week, our surprise of the week and our book of the week. So if you haven't figured out what book of the week is by now, especially with me, you probably don't know me. So stay tuned.